Good day, everyone, and welcome to the Candy User Virtual Seminar. We will aim to keep the virtual seminar within the allowed time frame of approximately 60 minutes. Due to the large number of people logged in this virtual seminar, we will not be able to answer any questions during the presentation. However, feel free to submit your questions with the provided function on the screen. Afterwards, we will collate these questions and get back to you. Now, without further delay, let's get started. On the agenda today, we will cover the following topics: organization transformation, RIB, how our company as your service provider transitioned through the years from our old look and feel to the current RIB corporate look, product offering, our latest and diverse products to assist our clients through digital transformation, previous seminars, content on all previous seminars like this for reference purposes, which are at your disposal if you require. The main topic for today, coping with rising costs, the reason for this virtual seminar, and have now become the norm in the construction sector globally. And lastly, the help center, all white papers and videos assistance to help you navigate and help yourself as you utilize our product. My name is Kabelo Sintumedi. I'm one of the customer success senior consultants here at RIB South Africa. I am a quantity surveyor by profession and previously worked in the construction industry as an estimator and site quantity surveyor. It is my pleasure to present this Candy User Virtual Seminar with my colleague, Brindley Webster. Brindley is one of our customer success senior consultant here at RIB South Africa. He is also a quantity surveyor by profession and has worked as an estimator and site QS in the industry before joining RIB. The first phase of this seminar will touch on the organization, which is our history, background from being CCS and now trading as RIB. Then we will touch on our products, offerings, and services before indulging into the main topic of the seminar, which is coping with rising costs. Let's have a look at organization. Candy was developed in 1978, and around 1980, construction computer software was fully established in Cape Town in South Africa by the late Peter Reynolds. CCS first international offices was established in Portugal and in the UK. Around the year 2000, Billsmart came into place, founded by Peter Chin in Pretoria, South Africa. And in 2008, CCS and Billsmart merged and created a unique integrated cost management solution for the construction industry. In the year 2012, CCS reached 15,000 users in over 50 countries globally. And by popular demand in 2014, QTO, which is our on-screen quantity takeoff software, was launched. Our organization was fully acquired by EOH in 2015, and in the year 2017, still under EOH, CCS celebrated 35 years of continuous operation with over 40,000 users globally. In the year 2019, CCS proudly joined the RIB Group, pioneers in construction software innovation. With the rebranding, the beginning of this year, we have now rebranded from RIB CCS to just being RIB, same but improved service provider, with our motto being revolution in building. Now let's have a look at products. We'll start with technology evolution. So Candy, it's a Windows-based software, and throughout all the years, we have developed the technology to ensure we are compatible with the changes. So from the old Microsoft Disk operating systems known as MS-DOS, which rebranded to IBM PC-DOS, and into Windows operating systems 1, Windows 3.2, Windows 95, 98, Windows XP, Windows 7, Windows 10, and now Windows 11. The old Candy interface had a stack menu option as displayed on the screen to select the applications. By then, the applications were Candy Systems for estimating and valuations, SitePlan for planning and programming, Cashflow for BOQ and Program Link, Cost and Allowables for cost reporting, Materials Received for capturing or ordering, delivered material on site, Drawing Register for capturing drawings received and revisions, the fifth base, which allows users to create column documents, layout, and formulate the values. And now currently, our interface has completely changed, displaying all applications in a job as tabs. So part of technology evolution is having stable internet connectivity, handheld devices, cloud technology, and now with development of data centers. Now, our product offering, we do have RIB Candy, RIB BillSmart, RIB Connect, RIB Candy Cloud, RIB Qtio, and the complete construction solution referred to as RIB CCS. I will also unpack on each product so that I give a clear indication of each product. Let's start with Candy. So Candy, it's our estimating, planning, and project control. So from an on-screen quantity takeoff, estimating, project planning through to final certificate, Candy provides an interactive link between the bill of quantity and estimate as well as the program in one exceptional project management solution. So we do have a suite that's available of applications such as the subcontractor manager. We have the ability to link the bill and the program, and from the dynamic link, we are able to generate the budget forecast into the link and forecast module, as well as run our post-tender valuation with all the tools that's available, and also variation orders that can be handled. And lastly, the cost versus allowable, your cost report. With BillSmart is our construction cost management and ERP. It's a full spectrum, real-time enterprise cost management, enabling contractors to take control of all aspects of enterprise cost accounting, including contracts, plants, equipments, job cards, overheads, and balanced sheet. With Candy, you price using first principle to generate the resource allowable, and it integrates with BillSmart where a contract can be created and those resource allowable can be dumped in the procurement module for the buying department, the procurement department to actually buy against what is being allowed for. So there's no human manipulation. The next product, it's our new product called the Connect. Connect is a full cloud-based warehouse with technology-driven process that seamlessly and securely pulls your Candy and BillSmart data into one central place so that you and your team can review, you can analyze, and deliver accurate results to your business critical questions anywhere, anytime, on any device in real time. It's got 3 modules. The Connect Plus. With Connect Plus, data from Candy is uploaded to and consolidated within a central Microsoft Azure database for accurate analytics, dashboards, and reports that cannot be tampered with. Users can engage with their tender finalization and cost report data. ERFQ, a single platform that lets users quickly create and submit electronic requests for quotation, ERFQs, while seamlessly managing their vendors. And then lastly, the Connect BI, which provides you with business intelligence that can be tailored to the precise demand of your organization. So infinitely customizable and ready to integrate with data sources like BillSmart, Candy, and other external sources. So unlike Connect Plus that uses predefined reporting formats, Connect BI can be configured to deliver reports that are far more detailed and in nuanced via bespoke dashboards designed to meet every client's unique requirements. Now, the combination of Candy, BillSmart, and Connect enables a full cost versus allowable control, on-site collaboration, and business intelligence throughout the lifecycle of the project from estimate to final account. With our Candy Cloud is a secure desk as a service solution that allows Candy to be deployed online, accessed, and fully managed from any location. It is available on Microsoft Azure and Amazon Web Services platform. With our QTO, using the built-in quantity takeoff system within Candy, estimators can seamlessly digitally compile and update the bill of quantity information using PDF and CAD drawing formats. And a user can measure, estimating, and valuation quantities directly. Utilize this data across on all aspects of the project's control. Now, for any further information with regards to demonstration of our software, clients can be able to contact any local offices, and we are more than welcome to demonstrate any of our new or existing products. Now, what's next? I'm going to touch on to the previous seminars. Our previous seminars was based on estimating tools, where we touched on advanced worksheet, indirect cost, bill description matching, and auto pricing, subcontract adjudicator, multiple currencies and pricing, markup, bill addendum, recoding, and we also had a look at some reports. We also covered a seminar on managed project on site, post-tender setup, valuation, quantities, subcontract managers, variation orders, cost and allowables, as well as some area bills, planning tools, project scheduling in Candy, comparison with MS Projects, comparison with Primavera, and the ability to link your BOQ to the program to generate that budget forecast, progress on your program, and value analysis, import allowable, import cost, do your monthly progress, and we had a look at the CPI as well as the SPI and remaining forecast. And then other seminars in future, we will be looking into QTO for any new changes and new features, Candy Cloud Connect Bid Management, Contracts Management, that is with Connect, the ERFQ, as well as Connect BI. I will now hand over to my colleague, Mr. Brindley Webster, to take you through the main topic of today, which is coping with rising costs.
Okay, thank you, KB, for a very insightful overview of how we have evolved over the years. Not just as a company, but with our product offering too. As you see from the previous slides, we have covered over the years a wide range of topics, and all is available on our help center. Alternatively, you can reach out to your local RIB offices for the link to the recordings. This year, we're talking about something that is affecting many of us in our industries, and that is coping with rising costs. Next, we're going to look at the critical risks faced by the construction industry. Firstly, inadequate resources and availability of funds, inadequate and low quality procurement of resources, cash flow problems within your business, no extra work control, which is a very big one. And next would be time and cost overruns. As we know, there are huge cost implications with that. So let's have a look at some tips for managing the rising cost within construction. First, you need to estimate accurately upfront. So at the tender stage, we need to make sure that we are allowing the correct sums or figures for our resources, labor, plant, and material. If we are going to be thumb sucking and guessing, there could be consequences to that at a later stage. We need to also develop a realistic budget. We need to make sure that what we are allowing for will take us through the duration of the project, from inception all the way to final completion, where we are not losing money. Next, we would need to control our costs throughout the project lifecycle on a monthly basis, on a quarterly basis, whatever you decide in your company, you need to report on what has happened within your business for that month or per construction site. Which then leads on to the next point, report the status frequently and accurately. Again, no thumb sucking, we want to reflect exactly what has happened on site versus our costs in order for us to understand where the company is for that project. And I think one of the most important factors is having a project post-mortem. So at the end of the project, we then sit down around the table, all of the stakeholders, and we then have a look at the project and say, we've lost money at this item. Why have we lost money? And start investigating so that when you price the next tender, you'll be pricing at the correct amount for that bill item. So we're going to now look at how do we use Candy escalation function to better manage our rising costs. Firstly, we need to understand what are the different types of contracts that we have in construction. And as we're all aware, some projects are subject to escalation, which is a clause that allows for the change in the agreed contract price should there be price fluctuations, in materials and labor during the execution of the contract. So this is where the client will pay you should certain items within your construction process increase. The next type that we have is a fixed price or a lump sum contract. And this is a fixed price contract, and it's a type of agreement with the predetermined value that does not change throughout the project, regardless of the time spent in the job or materials purchased. So as it says there, that it's a fixed price, there will be no changes to that price. So if the price of fuel goes up, it's the contractor's liability to make sure that they allow for any increases in the fuel price. Now that we understand the contracts, we can firstly focus on escalation, and these are contracts that are subject to escalation, and how do we handle this within Candy? So first we would look at first principle pricing. Next would be your tender finalization. We're then going to have a look at your post-tender management, and we would say in Candy with escalation claim. So firstly, just to recap on what first principle pricing is all about. So first principle pricing is the process of breaking down projects to its base components that will give the estimator or estimators a better understanding of the resource requirements and the applicable costs. So that little pictorial example you see at the bottom, we are building a brick wall that is made up of resources. We need the bricks, we need the mortar, which is the sand and the cement combined. We need labor to install the bricks or to lay the bricks, and we might even need some plant. We need to break down each rate down to its most basic form, and in Candy we call this first principles pricing. Next, we're going to look at tender finalization. So how do you go about finalizing a tender? So firstly, we would need to apply markup. Each company's markup would be different depending on how desperate they are for work. So some companies might allow a high markup because they are not desperate for work. For those companies that are more desperate, they would allow less of a markup on the project. You would then do your tender submission, whether it's open or closed tender, and hopefully you are awarded the project. So our first project that we're going to be looking at is a project that is subject to escalation, and we're going to have a look at the life cycle of this project. So firstly, we have our tender or our bid, which we're going to price using first principles estimating, which means we're going to use the estimating module within Candy. We will then do our tender finalization, where we put obviously the stakeholders in a room and decide and look at all of the factors, risk factors, in order to work out what our markup is. And hopefully we've put in a competitive bid and we then get awarded the project. So all this is happening at the pre-tender stage. Then comes the post-tender stage. So in Candy, how do you deal with the project that is subject to escalation? We do have tools within Candy to manage escalation. Alternatively, you could use other or external tools to manage your escalation. By using these, you would then be able to view a valuation report analysis. So in Candy, what you're seeing now is a screenshot in Candy. You would then go up to the valuations application. You'll notice that valuations is green. Click on advanced. You would then select escalation type. You would apply your base indices. You'd put in your indexes, your work, group codes, and what you see circled in red is your month's escalation, your previous month's escalation. This is our first valuation, therefore we do not have any previous. You are then able to see your escalation to date based on a work group code. So next we're going to look at escalation, but this time we're looking at a fixed price contract. So as we've already been through, we need to price this project using first principles in order to then have the job priced accurately so that we can then allow our final allowable revenue escalation or our post-tender management, where we again do our escalation allowable control. So looking at a fixed price contract or a lump sum contract, let's have a look at the project life cycle. As I mentioned, we price using first principles. We would then do our tender finalization, and this is where we then allow our escalation on allowable or on revenue. Looking at allowable, this can be done on our worksheets or within our resource list. And at revenue, we can allow escalation on our resource type risk, projected escalation, or top sheets within Candy. We would then hopefully be awarded the project on condition that we do not allow too much escalation or too little. We still need to compile a competitive submission so that we are possibly awarded the project. We then look at the post-tender stage of the project. At this stage, this is where we would do our post-tender preparation. We would then do our monthly valuations. We would then import our costs in order to do our cost and allowable progress analysis. Looking at our revenue escalation. So your revenue escalation is done by inflating the markup to generate a higher selling rate that is inclusive of escalation allowance. So as I've mentioned, the client will not pay us if there has been an increase in the price of fuel. It's a fixed price contract or a lump sum contract. Therefore, we need to allow for these possible increases in the beginning of the project. Even if the project is over 5 years, 6 years, we would need to allow for that increase. Next, we have our revenue escalation. Does not affect the net rate, but affects the selling markup. And lastly, our selling markup will then be a combination of projected profit and escalation allowance. So looking at our revenue escalation, our allowance that we're going to make, we're going to now look at the tender finalization process, and we're going to firstly look at our resource type risk markup, our projected escalation markup, and lastly the top sheet adjustment where we would set our gross totals. So firstly, resource type risk. How do we allow for this in Candy? So looking at the calculation of how the gross rate is calculated, it would be our net rate, which is our allowable, multiplied by our risk plus 1, multiplied by our markup plus 1. As an example, we've got a net rate of 100. That 100 is broken down into 50 labor and 50 plant. We then say, we know that during the tender project or the project, we're going to see a 10% increase in the labor, possibly a 10% increase. Therefore, I'm going to allow a 10% risk, resource type risk on my labor. So you'll notice that 50 multiplied by 10% gives us the 5. We then do not see any risk on our plant. Maybe that's because we own our plants. Therefore, 50 multiplied by 0% gives us 0. So that gives us our total of 105, which is our net rate plus the resource risk. And then after that, we would then apply our markup. And we've done a trade markup of 10%. So our total of 105 multiplied by 10% gives us a trade markup of 10.5. And on the last line, you see our total markup equals our projected profit, including escalation allowance of 115.50. So that is how we deal with resource type risk. How do you do this in Candy? In the estimating application, we then click on finalization. We then go down to markup, and the second option says resource type risk. When we click on resource type risk, it then shows us all of our resource types, and you are able to apply a percentage markup to either labor, plant, material, however you have your Candy set up and defined. So that takes care of our resource type risk. Next, we're going to have a look at our projected escalation markup. How is this calculated? Firstly, it is your selling rate equals your net multiplied by your percent risk multiplied by your percent markup plus your net multiplied by your projected escalation. So this is to give you an idea of where this comes into play. So how does this work in Candy? So again, we're in the estimating application. We then click on finalization once again. We would then go down to markup, and we would then click on projected escalation. This then opens up your projected escalation document. And here you will see that you are able to allow a percentage on a resource type based on a trade code within Candy. So as an example, you can see for earthworks, we're allowing 2.6% for labor. The reason being, earthworks might be done in the beginning of the project, and we foresee that we might have an increase in January. Therefore, we're allowing it in the beginning of the project, and then you're reinforcing under your temporary materials, we've allowed an 8%. This would then need to be, you would then need to update your selling. So where the cursor is at the moment, you would then select that option, which would then update your selling rate. So that takes care of our projected escalation markup. The next one would be our top sheet adjustment, where we would set our gross totals. So how do you do this in Candy? Again, in the estimating application, we then click on finalization. We then have top sheets available. And the second option is your standard Candy top sheet based on your bill quantity. This will then create this document. And looking at this document, you'll see that you are able to view the contract name, the tender number, the currency that the project is priced in, the program duration, and you would also see the base date. So those are all blocks that you are able to input. You would then see your net totals, your additions, and your percentage of your net value. Below that, you can see your trades. Firstly, we can see our P&G indirect costs. Heading number 1, heading 2 would be our direct costs broken down into your subcontractors and your provisional sums, which gives us our totals. So for this project, the vent shaft and substation tender, you can see that it is 29,451,434. Below that, heading 4 is your tender adjustments. So there you can see the white blocks are editable, which then generate the gray blocks. So for this project, we're allowing an 8% contract risk, which then works backwards to give us the 2.3 million. Our measurement contingency, we're allowing 3%. Our tender costs of 15,000, and most importantly is your fixed price or escalation. We're allowing 8.25. So later on in this presentation, I'll be showing you how we could possibly work out that 8.25. We are not allowing any figures for design costs. And lastly, we have our company overheads of 20%, which then gives us a total of 11,574,688, which then takes our total of our tender of 41,026,122. Next, we're going to look at our revenue escalation, and just a quick demonstration on how this is worked out. We have our net amount plus our projected profit, which gives us our selling price. So here we can see we have 40 million US dollars plus 10%, then gives us 44 million, and that has no escalation allowance on it. We then have 40 million plus 18%, and this is with an escalation allowance, which gives us a total of 47,200,000. So our 40 million the 18% is broken up into two. Firstly, we have 10%, which is our projected profit, and our 8%, which is our escalation allowance. So this is a possibility of you allowing for escalation within Candy. Next, we're going to look at our allowable escalation. You have two options here. You can either allow it on your resource list, where we would include the escalation column rate modifier. Alternatively, you can use a worksheet where you have a escalation resource allowance. What we're going to do for this example is we've got our resource list. We've got the highest value of the resource types. So you'll notice that our OPC bulk 50 kg, we've got a total of 1.7 million. That's the highest material resource. Next, we have our high tensile steel of all sizes is 1.6 million. And lastly, we have our diesel, which is 993,000. So these are the top three material resources. And we are going to focus on these resources and make sure that we have the correct allowances in terms of escalation. Because they are such high values, we do possibly have a chance of losing a lot of money if we do not allow the correct escalation. So how could we possibly work out how much, what percentage escalation to allow? And the next slide will show you an example of how you can work out how much escalation to allow. So what we're looking at here is our labor graph analysis. So in year one, we have a utilization of 4,000 hours for a laborer, and he gets a base rate of $40 US. That gives us a cost including escalation of 160 because we do not have any escalation allowances as yet, and then our cost excluding escalation of 160. In year two, we have a usage of 10,000 hours. He's still getting the same rate of $40 US. However, in year two, we see that there could be an escalation or increase of 8%. Therefore, the cost including escalation is 432, and our cost excluding escalation would be 400,000. So in that year alone, if you haven't allowed the correct escalation percentage, you could stand a chance of losing 32,000, and this is just on your labor resource. In year three, you've got a utilization of 46,000 hours. 6,000 hours. The base rate is 40, and again we see a possible increase of 8%. That gives us our cost, including escalation, of 280,000.2, and our cost excluding escalation of 240. So again here you could have possibly lost out on 40.2 thousand US dollars. So looking at the graph below, we see there's our first year, second year, and third year, 2023, 2024, and 2025. At the beginning of 2023, we see that there is an 8% increase. Bear in mind that our project would have started in 2022. In the year 2024, at the beginning of the year, there's another 8% increase going through to 2025, where we see another 8% increase. So our project is over 3 years. So that then gives us a total of 20,000 hours. Our base rate would still be 40, but then we can see our cost including escalation and our cost excluding escalation. So how do you work out what percentage to allow? You would take your cost including escalation, subtract your cost excluding escalation, which is your 800,000, which then gives us 72.2 thousand. We then divide that 72.2 by the 800,000 multiplied by 100, then gives us our 9.025%. That then tells us if we take our $40 multiplied by the 9.025% is 3.61. The 40 plus the 3.61 gives us 43.61. So what this is telling us is that in year one, your labor is going to cost you 40, but you have an allowance of 43.61. In year two, your labor is going to cost you 43.2, but you still have an allowance of 43.61. Okay, so we're still in the green. Please bear in mind that the surplus is not to be declared as profit, as it will complement the shortfall in year 3, where it's now costing you 46.7 and your allowance that you have in your bid is 43.61. Okay, so we've allowed for that shortfall in the year 3, and therefore, as I mentioned, you do not declare this as profit as yet. Next, we're going to look at your allowable escalation and the ways that you're able to do this. So we have our resource list where we have our escalation column rate modifier. So this is done by including the column, escalation positive column. It's column number 2.4 when you go to your add and remove columns. And it can be renamed to escalation or ESC for short. So you'll notice you have your resource list, your base rate, your escalation allowance, which will then give you your final rate. Next is your allowable inflation in your worksheet. And there are multiple ways of doing this. The first way would be to have an escalation resource type. Number 2 would be escalation resource. Number 3 is your escalation cost code definitions. Number 4 is your escalation cost code allocations to your escalation resources. And then we have our worksheet pricing to include escalation resources. I'm going to take you through each one of these. The first one would be your escalation resource type. So how do you do this? You would go to your definitions within Candy, and as you see on screen, number 1.2 are your resource types. And this is where you would define, as an example, we have defined Z as escalation. Now that you have that defined, you are now able to go to your resource list, document 1.1, and we have taken our high tensile steel. We've given it a resource type of Z, because that's what we defined as escalation. We've then copied the code from your high tensile steel, and at the end of it, we've added a suffix called ESC, which stands for your escalation control. Now that your resource has been defined, you would then go back to your definitions and settings where you would define a cost code called 99000 ESC. That's the code that we've defined. Your code can be any code which you feel, and we are calling that escalation control. Once we are done with that, we then would need to go and allocate the cost code. So we would open up document number 1.7, which is our resource group and cost code allocation document. You'll notice there is my high tensile steel, the last resource, and we've now got the cost code column, and we've allocated that same cost code to all of the items which we would like to control our escalation with. That gives us a total of 811,313.51. Number 5 is your worksheet pricing to include your escalation resources. Okay, so this worksheet is for my 16mm diameter high tensile steel reinforcement. You'll see that I have allowed for some labor. I've allowed for my high tensile steel. That is the price that I've got for this month, for this bid of 13,500 per ton, plus 3% for wiring and spaces. But then that item is very volatile. The price might go up, it might come down. Therefore, I'm allowing a resource within the worksheet. You'll see the suffix, the ESC, on the code, and you'll see in brackets you have ESC control for escalation control, and I'm allowing 3,605 for my escalation. This then carries through to your resource list. You'll then see that I have an allowance of 418,095 for my high tensile steel escalation control. And that takes care of how you would manage escalation within Candy. I'd now like to hand over to Kabila to take you through the post-tender controls of your escalation. Thank you.
Thank you, Bryn. A quick recap on what Brinley has covered. He has covered the first principles estimate, the tender finalization, and he also explained the two ways of applying escalation under the allowable as well as under revenue. And therefore, with all those tools and options that are available, I'm going to take you through the post-tender management. After it's being awarded, we will go through the post-tender preparation, valuations, up until we do our cost versus allowable progress analysis. The post-tender preparation, part of good practice, it's step one is to preserve the bid rates, where all your net, which is your allowable rates, a snapshot can be taken and copied over and under the bid rates column. The final quantities, all bill quantities can be copied as anticipated final quantities. Selling rates, so you can copy all your gross rates and copy them into the selling rates to be now your contractual rates, the client. And therefore, you have the opportunity to remodel all worksheets, better buying, production, methodology, and just to name those few. And lastly, to upload your resource budget into BillSmart for procurement purposes and control. Now, with cost versus allowable progress analysis, the first thing we're going to look into is to progress our job. We would then import our costs from accounts and be able to do a detailed cost versus allowable analysis. So with progress, we will start with valuation number one. As displayed on the screen on the top half, it is my valuation document, which has the following quantity columns: the actual quantity columns for internal quantity purposes, the claimed quantities for external, and also the paid is what the client would have paid you or certified. And the bottom half document, it is the cost and allowables document by period. When we enter our actual quantities, we will then see the movement of how the actual quantities generates the to-date allowable. So we first enter the actual quantities. Once the actual quantities have been entered, that will generate the allowable to date. Let's analyze that allowable that's been generated. So if you look at cost code 9900ESC, is a ledger code created to control our escalation value in this example. And once we've entered our actual quantity, it generated a value of 772,648. And on the bottom half, you will also notice that under that ledger code 9900ESC, it's got that escalation value to date of 772,648. Now, if we expand that ledger code, you will now have a clear indication of what it comprises of. As a breakdown, it's got diesel with an allowable generated to date of about 16,000, cement with a value of 342,000, as well as our steel high tensile at 413. Now that we've looked into the allowable that's been generated, how do we bring the cost into the picture? In Candy, under the cost and allowables, in the document manager, we do have document 3.1 for cost import. So to date, cost can be imported as follows. It can be imported directly from BillSmart, and the cost will include all the accruals. You can import from the Candy's materials received module, as well as import from other sources. So once you've clicked on the menu, imported the cost, it will be populated as per displayed on the screen. So several columns are provided so that adjustment can be made to the imported cost. And these adjusted costs can now be released for comparison with the allowables. And therefore, the cost import document should form part of our cost reporting pack. Now I'm going to display both the cost and allowables document, which only has the allowables to date, and on the bottom half will be the cost that we've just gone through and how we had imported from accounts. Now the adjusted costs can now be released for comparison with the allowable, and in the cost import document under the menu tools, release cost for cost and allowables. And once they are released, we are able to look at the analysis. Now let's look at that analysis in more detail. You will notice that on the cost and allowables by period document, there is the escalation control allowable of 772,648. And on the bottom half, I've displayed my utilization and value with the final quantities and grouped by ledger code. So all those resources with the ledger 990 ESC. Now escalation value may now be monitored directly with the detailed breakdown, which will supplement the escalated cost. Now, if we have a look at cement, you will notice that it shows a variance of negative 342,748. And if you have a look at the breakdown at the bottom half, you will see that part of that allowable under escalation will take care of that variance, which has a value of 342,748.36. And then the second ledger code that we're going to look at is our steel reinforcement, which has a variance of 412. And if you have a look at the breakdown at the bottom, you will see that provision has been made against that allowable of 413. And then lastly, the fuel. It's got a variance of minus 15,000. And if we look at our escalation allowable, we have about 16,000 allowed for. Now the actual cost versus allowable comparison. The Candy cost and allowables compares allowances with actual cost over the project and forecasts the results at completion. We also want to look at the future. To date, we'll be able to analyze what has happened and it is now historical information for us. So one of the most difficult aspects of forecasting cost at completion is to determine the remaining cost for a project. And therefore, in order to manage rising costs on a project, Kendi provides post-tender facilities called the resource cost rate, as well as the cost worksheet. Now, these Kendi tools for managing costs. Point number one, it's our resource cost rate, and it is used to monitor our cost resource rate against remaining quantities. And then secondly, we've got the cost worksheet that will assist to monitor the waste against remaining, the production against remaining quantity, as well as methodology against the remaining quantity. And then lastly, is to analyze to-date status of a project and also to monitor the remaining status as well as at completion status of a project. Now let's have a look at a typical example of how the resource cost rate could assist us. Now, in the event that we have a price change, and for this example, we will just open up the resource cost rate to completion document. And you will notice that our cost rate for cement, it is exactly the same as our allowable final rate, with a rate of 109 and a cost rate of 109. And in the event that cement price does change, or it does happen that our supply is out of stock and we are forced to buy somewhere else where it's slightly more expensive, then we adjust the cost rate. And just by analyzing this change, you can see that the allowable that's remaining, it's got a value of 130,000 versus the cost on the remaining, which will be 158,000 now that we've made that change. Right, so by adjusting that cement, we can now look at the remaining allowable versus remaining cost, and we can see that there is a variance of 27,000 that we're going to incur due to the price change. And just to verify if we have that supplemented into our escalation allowable, I can open the utilization and value by final quantity, look at the remaining usage, and you will see that we do have an allowance of about 28,000 that can cover that variance. Right, now we've gone through the whole process of the explanation that Brinley did take us through of a subject to escalation. And now also the fixed price contract, and ending off with my explanation of the post-tender management with regards to escalation. We would now like to make all our clients aware of our help center. And the help center will assist many users in getting access to any training cost notes, user guides, user manual, release notes, etc. And also the following information is available: the licensing option, the Kendi release notes, the BillSmart solution, and the Kendi Cloud. For those that have updated their Candy to the latest version, the Help Center menu, previously it was under the support menu, and now we've decided to make it available and make all our users aware of this facility. Now, to access the Help Center, in the top right, you click on the Help Center menu and ensure that you do have access to internet. Once that option has been clicked, the Help Center will be launched and opened on your internet browser, displaying all these tiles which carry the information that are relevant. Now, if I click under estimating tile as an example, it should be able to open up information relating to estimating. And you will notice that you do have the getting started, any training courses relating to estimating, any did you know, user guides, and frequently asked questions, as well as webinars. If I click on webinars, it will open up our webinar page, and all our webinar pages are similar with a question and answer. And please note that that circle, that blue circle there, it is a video with a link for you to be able to click on and view the videos. I would like to take this moment, myself and Brindley, to thank everyone for attending this virtual seminar. It was with great pleasure for us to present to you this seminar with regards to coping with a rising cost. Please feel free to contact us, and also make sure that you make use of the provided question block on the screen to get in touch with us. From myself and Brindley, thank you very much.